Welcome to another episode of The Communicative Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Leah O, and today we're joined by Amy Daughters, an award-winning author, keynote speaker whose unique approach to connection is making a huge impact. Amy's work, which includes her acclaimed books, Dear Dana and You Cannot Miss This Up, is all about bridging the gap in our digital-first world through the forgotten art of handwritten letters. She has a remarkable story of writing 580 handwritten letters to all of her Facebook friends, a journey that has illuminated a path to authentic relationships, communication, and leadership. Featured on shows like The Kelly Clarkson Show, Amy brings a blend of humor, wit, and deep insight that inspires leaders to embrace vulnerability, foster genuine kinship. In this episode, we'll explore how leaders can use this timeless practice to engage employees, build trust, and create a culture of profound connection. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million-Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your time, your expertise. I'm really excited for our conversation. And I'm hoping a nice way to start us off is you could walk us through your story. You wrote 580 handwritten letters. This is really inspiring. And I was hoping you could tell us kind of what led you to this project and maybe some of the discoveries that emerged along the way.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Dr. O. I'm excited to be here. I was minding my own business when this letter writing thing happened to me. So it's not like I didn't seek this out in any way. And I actually think that it makes the whole thing was more magical for me, but I think it's even more impactful because I didn't try to do it. But basically I'm a freelance writer and an author. And I was on Facebook one day and looked up an old friend from 35 years ago who I'd met at a summer camp. Voila, she shows up. I'm like, and we've become friends because it doesn't require us to do anything else.
Okay.
And I scroll through her life and right away I find out she's overachieved in children. She has 5 of them. And 4 girls, 1 boy. He's the youngest. His name is Parker. And right away I found out he's sick. He's battling cancer.
Oh.
And he's at St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee. So that means it's, serious. So I don't hit like or I don't comment on anything. I just watch. She asks for prayers. I pray because that's kind of my thing. But other than that, there was no interaction because I felt like that was disingenuous. Here's this woman fighting for her kid's life. He goes into remission. They go back home. And then towards the end of that same year, the cancer comes back. And she's very honest, posts this big post. We're going back to Memphis, Tennessee. And I sat down at my desk the next morning and Dr. O was literally like a lightning bolt hit me in the head. I was like, I'm going to send them supportive cards and notes. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
For 10 to 12 weeks. I hadn't written anyone a letter in 30 years. I'd written letters as a young person, as a college student, until instantaneous communication came around. So I write them for probably 14, 15 weeks. And then tragically, and there's no good words for it, the kid loses his life at 15 years old. So I don't know what to do. It has nothing to do with me. I sent her a condolence card, but then I just felt like I just couldn't leave her hanging. I couldn't just, the letter stopped.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll just keep writing at her house. So mini lightning bolt, but I have to kind of figure out where to mail the letters. I send them to her husband.
Yeah.
He's an attorney, law office. And then week after week, I put her on my writing schedule. I write her. The letters start to be longer and longer. And then just about the time where I'm telling myself I'm crazy and I should stop, I walk out to my mailbox. We still had no interaction. And there's a 10-page letter from this woman. It's just incredible. And in it, she said, I didn't mean to write this long. She writes about her grief. She tells me all kinds of things. At the end, she says, I didn't mean to say any of that, but I feel better for saying it.
Yeah.
And so this kicks off 2 years of me and this woman writing each other. We don't email, we don't text.
Yeah.
It opens up an incredible free space. We trust each other. We share with each other. I'm looking at my life from the outside in. She's writing about her grief. After about 8 months of that, I sat back and I said, this has changed my perspective on everybody, because it's like taking the
Mm-hmm.
veil off of Facebook and seeing what
Yes.
someone's real life is about, and the depth and the
Yep.
trust it was so profound that I sat back and thought, if there's this much good to be had with this one random girl who I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even really 100% remember, like, what about the other hundreds of people who I'm supposedly friends with? Like,
Yeah.
what else is out there? I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go all world bananagrams, and I'm going to
Yeah.
try to write all these people. So I bought
Yeah.
stationery, I shoved all their names in a
Yeah.
box, and I got a journal. And I swear to you, I thought I was going to get to like letter 30 and I was going to be like, peace out on the letters.
Yep.
But when I
Yep.
got to letter 30, Dr. O, I realized I had unleashed a power in my own life
Oh.
of goodness that I could not
Yeah.
stop. So it took me 18 months, and I wrote the
Mm-hmm.
580 letters, and now I cannot
Wow.
shut up about it. That's the
Yep.
backstory to the letters.
Wow, that is amazing, Amy. I mean, there's just so much beauty in that and thinking about connection. And I know we're going to get into that in our conversation. But you're right, so much of this life we're living now, it's easier in some ways, it's quicker, but it's very superficial. And we're just scratching the surface. And you're helping to remind us of the power of true connection.
Right, right. And again, I think the universe or God, however you want to frame it, gave me this
Mm-hmm.
incredible story. Like
Yeah.
the 600 letters is 100% my calling card, and I
Yep.
never meant it to be. And this was my
Yeah.
inspirational tale. When I wrote a book, I started to speak about it.
Yep.
I thought it was my little inspo story.
Yeah.
What happened was, this is applicable to any place where
Mhm.
two humans are trying to connect in a more genuine way, or it needs to be enhanced. And that includes, you know, organizations. I started to speak to
Mhm.
organizations and
Yep.
referral based businesses, and I was shocked. I had a real estate group ask me to speak, and I was like, what do the real estate people want with me? And
Yeah.
I realized that I had, again, unleashed this tool we all have in our toolkits. Anyone who's listening,
Yes.
you don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be, all you have to do is be a human being with a sincere heart in about 10
Yep.
minutes of your time. And this will blow the doors off of any relationship
Yep.
you want to put this into use for.
Mhm. Exactly. I think about one of the classes I teach is persuasion and social influence. And there's some research it's showing that sales folks who actually take the time to write handwritten letters or cards are those that are much more successful than peers who will send the text or maybe an email or nothing at all.
Right, and there's science and there's numbers attached to that, because
Yep.
I speak to referral based businesses.
Yeah.
We think that customer satisfaction is about being pleased with a product or being
Mhm.
pleased with a service, but really the top, all these science and all these research, the top thing that drives repeat business
Mhm.
is people feeling valued.
Bingo. Yep.
And
Bingo.
who would have known it? Because
Yeah.
we think that's all feelings, because we're in such a factual, data-driven world.
Mhm.
But the data and the science backs this
Yeah.
up 100%, that the feelings, and it's also sincere marketing. It's good practice
Mhm.
businesses. In an organization,
Yes.
it's like
Yep.
leading with a heart, and
Bingo.
that makes you, at the end, the person, like for me,
Mhm.
the person most changed from all these letters and notes, and I still write notes, is
Mhm.
me. And you're a better manager.
Yeah.
You're a better, if you're an accountant, you're a better customer service person. You're a
Yes.
better human being by doing this. And I think the other thing, Dr.
Mhm.
O, that needs to be clarified is the word letter. That's daunting.
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
You can get the same impact from a 2-page letter in 2 sentences. If it's
Mhm.
handwritten, it's sincere, because it's
Yep.
such a deliberate thing, and we can get into the impact of it. But I had no idea. And it
Mhm.
is absolutely, besides handing someone a check for $1,000, you're going to have a hard
Mhm.
time having a bigger
Yeah.
impact in any
Yep.
context of your life than you are with a handwritten note.
Yeah. And I love that you differentiate. It doesn't, when we think letter, someone might think like, I don't have the time to fill a scroll. But like you said, if these are thoughtful couple sentences, that lands in a way that the text or email doesn't.
Right. And especially in a leadership or
Mhm.
customer based business, you don't need to go on and on anywhere,
Yeah,
but sincere and
exactly.
specific comments
Mhm.
with your name signed underneath it. I mean, you just cannot, you will unleash so much goodness, you will not even believe what
Yes.
happened.
So let's think more about this digital disconnect that we're living in. And I know this is something that you, through your work and through your keynotes, your connections, you're really starting to see this, that we're a very digital world, but also a very disconnected world. And I'm wondering, what are some of the most significant ways this digital first approach that we're living in? How do you see that when you're out in these industries and community events? How do you see that impacting leadership and team dynamics?
Right, and I think it comes down to employee engagement, and the reason it's in a dumpster
Mhm.
fire is because
Mhm.
people, and then you throw in our fractured culture right now anyway,
Yep.
and that disengagement shows up everywhere, and it shows up in people feeling disconnected, and
Yep.
then throw in the fact that we had the pandemic, and people are
Mhm.
siloed, and we're connected to more people. It's just the same concept as social media. We're connected
Mhm.
to more people, but not individually. People
Yep.
feel more and more siloed. People feel more and more disengaged. People feel more and
Mhm.
more like they're on their own and nothing that they do matters. And they're not
Yep.
seen, they're not heard, they're not valued. And again,
Mhm.
you can put this into any human context. You can be a customer, you can be an employee, you can be a leader. You can be a
Mhm.
mid-level manager, and you
Yep.
feel these same things because it's a human emotion. But I think and the
Mhm.
digital thing just drives that, because there's no if you send me a text, you don't have to put a lot. And it's not that the text didn't mean anything, and it's not that I don't mean anything to you,
Yep.
but since that's what we do, you don't feel personally
Mhm.
seen or valued, or that
Yep.
someone took the time to do something for you. There's not a
Yes.
commitment.
Y-
There's
Yeah.
not something that has to be, given.
Exactly. And I think that leads us to this next question, the power of the pen. And that's what I was thinking about. And, as a leadership communication scholar, that this handwritten letter, it's more than just the words on the page or the card or, that little scrap of paper you're leaving to say thank you. So, Amy, in your experience, what is this act of this handwritten note in the workplace? What is it communicating beyond just that text on the page?
Right. And this is where the magic happens, because you're right. It's more
Mm-hmm.
than, of course, sincere, well-meant words are always,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're a text or an email. But in this busy, because we all know how busy everyone is, that everyone's,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you're looking at a leader in your organization, a direct leader, you're watching them, you're watching how
Yep.
busy they are. But they're going to, when they hold this note in their hand, I call it the magic
Mm-hmm.
at the mailbox. We can call it the
I
magic at the
love it.
inbox. We can call it the
Yeah.
magic at the the mailbox,
Yeah.
or in the wherever you receive this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's magic, because when you hold this in your hands, when the employee holds
Mm-hmm.
this in their hand, they're going to realize, they're going to connect the dots. And I have so much experience with this. They're going to say, wait a second, this person had to take the time to sit down, wait, where are the note cards? Wait, I don't have time to
Mm-hmm.
do this. I could send you an email, but I'm going to literally get this ballpoint pen out, and I'm going to write you two sentences. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
sign it. Then I'm going to seal the envelope myself. And then I'm going to have to find how I'm going to get it to you. If you work remotely, I'm going to have to find your address and get a
Yeah.
stamp. And I'm going to have to put it in the mail, or somebody's going to have to put it in the mail. Or they had to walk across and put it in my inbox, or they had to,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they had to do. And they're going to hold that tactile thing that
Yeah.
you held in your hand, that they're going to be like, this is how much I mean to this organization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean so much that someone would take time to do this, because they could have sent me an
Mm-hmm.
email. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's really, I think, a nice reminder that it is the process and the journey and not just that end result, that people start to recognize that you care. You took this time.
Right. And you're that person is valued, or whatever they contributed
Yeah.
is valued, and they're seen that much. And again, there's numbers associated with the feelings,
Yeah.
and this isn't, but it will absolutely, I have so many stories of people who I've worked with. I
Yeah.
went and spoke to a group of women leaders, and she said she employed this, and she started writing one note a week, one note,
Mm-hmm.
not one letter,
Mm-hmm.
one
Yep.
card,
I
little tiny
love it.
card.
Mm-hmm.
And she said after about 6 months, and we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, but she had to get over that.
Yeah.
But she said she walked out.
Yes.
She had like 1,500 people working for her.
Yeah.
And she walked out into Cubicle Row one day, and she
Mm-hmm.
said she knew who she wrote the letters to, or the
Mm-hmm.
notes. And so she said
Mm-hmm.
they were hung up and displayed like
Mm-hmm.
a badge of honor in these people's
Yeah.
cubicles. And she was like,
Yeah.
wow. And then she started doing 2 a week.
Amazing. And so about that, Amy, you found that this genuine kinship, it thrives in these unexpected places. And you just shared a story, but I'm hoping you can share another about a connection or response that you received that really surprised you and taught you something new about relationships and connections.
Right. And I think, the Facebook project was obviously a more
Mm-hmm.
personal affair, but I think again, it's human beings relate in the same way, whatever the context is of the
Mm-hmm.
relation. But I wrote a girl who I went to high school with, who I knew because of social media, believed, absolutely probably the opposite of most everything I believed. Like we were on
Okay.
different sides of this great abyss that we've
Mm-hmm.
been we've been told
Yep.
we're standing on now.
Abyss is the good word.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the letter thinking,
Uh-huh.
she's going to look at it and, she knows where I stand too. And she's going to think,
Mm-hmm.
plus I hadn't seen her since high school. She was one of the cool girls and I wasn't, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. So I sent her a letter and basically just said,
Mm-hmm.
look, I appreciate the fact that because she was one of those people who presents her opinion respectfully, and I said, I've learned
Mm-hmm.
from your posts. I'm glad we're different
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Yeah.
where change really starts. Because I
Yep.
thought maybe that
Bingo.
was, and I said, I hope you keep posting. We got brought up in this tight suburban box. I
Mhm.
appreciate that we both try to stand outside of it and we probably have more common ground than we think. I didn't think I'd ever hear from her again in my life. So I get a
Yeah.
letter back from her and she said, I am filled with so much hope when I hear from
Mhm.
someone like you, and she said, I hope we stay in touch. And I agree, that our
Yeah.
differences are what makes us better. And I'm still in touch with this girl, despite everything that's
Amazing.
happened since then. And it just reminded me that, our hope, the hope we're looking for is really in each other.
Yes. Yep. And good on you, Amy, for praising the differences and for recognizing value because for a lot of folks, we see that messaging, we realize, oh, this is different than what my messaging would be, and we shut it down. But like you're saying, there is a lot of interesting space and room for growth if we can get beyond those initial differences. And even doesn't mean we ever have to accept them. We never have
Yeah.
to adapt them, accept them, adopt them as our own, but to acknowledge that there's a way to learn from others and, to have a dialogue.
Right. And we can connect without condition. And
Hmm.
this applies to the
Bingo.
workplace as well. But we can
Hmm.
reach our hand across that abyss, not because like you said,
Yep.
it's important. We don't have to agree. We don't have to
Hmm.
adopt something that we're absolutely not going to adopt. All we have to do is
Yep.
say, this is another human being who I sit next to, who I work for, who I work with. And that connection is supersedes. I can still care about them.
Yes.
I can still listen to
Yes.
them. I can
Yep.
still respect them, even if I'll never agree with them.
Yep. Oh, love it. Amen, sister. So you mentioned vulnerability before, and you know that this work, depending on whom you're writing to and what you're writing about, it can really put people in a vulnerable space. And so I'm thinking from a leadership perspective, for a leader, what does leading with vulnerability look like in practice? And how can the simple act of writing a letter or a note help to build more trust and rapport with team members?
Right. I think, leading with vulnerability, you when you absolutely are going to show a personal side of you or a personal element of you,
Hmm.
people are going to appreciate that. But I know from
Hmm.
writing notes, I still write a note to someone every day just because it's
Hmm.
intoxicating and it's the best version of
Hmm.
me and it honors the whole story and I can't stop myself anyway. But every morning when I sit down and write Dr. O, I still
Yeah.
feel like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. And I have written hundreds upon
Hmm.
hundreds of
Hmm.
notes. And so I think as a leader, when you sit down to do this, the people I've worked with, you're going to have that moment. You're going to be like, this is a great idea. Like I'm bought into
Hmm.
it, but I don't think I can do it. It's like a huge speed bump. And you're like, wait, or
Yeah.
maybe in a hurdle, you're going to be, wait, what am I going to say? And how is this going to be received? Because no one
Hmm.
does this, but if you can be sincere and brief and just push
Hmm.
yourself over that whole hurdle in the name
Yeah.
of goodness and connection
Hmm.
and genuine leadership, then magical things are going to happen. But my advice in that vulnerability, because there's something so deep in the human connectivity of this note writing. What you're going to, by getting over that speed bump, that hurdle, you're going to show somebody a part of yourself, and they're going to see you in a different way. You're going to see yourself in a different way, and it's going to pay off on so many different levels. So if you just get yourself over, and the way to get yourself over is to be brief and be sincere and specific. And it could be something as easy as, hey, doctor, when we were in that meeting yesterday, that idea you had, that was incredible. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you do next, Amy Daughters. Or you write me, it could be as simple as, Amy, like, let's say I work for you. Amy, we heard about, the loss of your dad. The team and I are all supporting you. We're so sorry. Your name. And you don't have to say love or sincerely. You don't have to even have a sign off. And you do it with your own personality. But looking for something specific and being very brief takes some of the vulnerability out, because you can reread it and feel you can stand behind your words.
Yeah, I love that. That's so helpful, because I had written down brief when you were saying that. And I think for a lot of folks that, like you said, removes one of the hurdles. And I think too, the sign off, I think that's something that a lot of folks are like, what do I say? They don't want to fumble it at that point. And I think you're right. Just your name can remove any potential anxiety. And thank you for raising those 2 points up. I think it really helps to simplify it. When you were talking, I was thinking too, because a lot of my work in coaching leaders are like, well, I don't want to reveal private information to my team. I'm like, it's personal, not private.
Right.
There's a difference. And that's where we want to lean. We want to make sure it's not sensitive information we're not comfortable sharing. But if we're leaning to our experiences or just acknowledging how we feel or how we hope they feel, that is a different story.
Yeah. And I think you ask yourself, am I being sincere? Absolutely. I'm being sincere. That's a sincere, and I think that's it. And I think that's what rehumanizes. That's what gives the feeling. That's why it's going to be a tool that, that like, again, I mean, it's a pizza party is not going to do better. Even recognition. This is so one-on-one and personal that they're going to feel the love. And I say the love, but it's the value. It's that deep human need we have to be seen and heard and valued. And it can be done so simply.
Exactly. So, Amy, my next question, we've kind of touched on some of this already, but I'm thinking about the communication beyond the words. And we kind of talked about, what it symbolizes, but I'm wondering, in your work and your experience, the coaching and connecting you're doing, the leaders who are engaging in writing these notes, like you said, the manager who's doing it once a week and I was doing it twice, from other folks like her and similar, what does it say about their values and their priorities?
Right. And I think what they're doing is I think it's looking at a person. It's almost like changing the language we use about. It's like a language, a mindset shift. We're saying, we're taking somebody from being an employee and we're saying, wait, first you're a human being. We're taking a customer and saying, hey, you're not just somebody who keeps the door open. You're somebody who's experiencing this real, messy, beautiful, tragic, triumphant life inside these walls and outside of these walls.
Yes. Yep. That was said beautifully, Amy. I love that. And thinking more about what happens when leaders, because especially a lot of times they're the ones who are setting the tone for an organization, for a team. So if they want to foster this handwritten culture in their organization, what are either first I would like to talk about the kind of the pitfalls or the pain points, resistance that might come up, and then how they might overcome that when they're looking to kind of embrace and foster this mindset shift you're talking about.
Right. And I think that every organization or every team, is different. So I think it's important to employ this within the context of what works for you. But first of all, I would say, set the example. You're the starting point as the leader, but I other thing, you can make this fun. You can have a Friday once a month where you all get together and you bring in some kind of lunch, and then you have note cards and say, look, here's the deal. If you want to come to lunch, then you have to write 2 sentences to someone else in this organization. And you have to put it in an envelope and just deliver it, and I think that's a way to get people engaged. But then you also take it seriously enough where you have the tools available for people. And this is a super low investment
Yeah.
thing. You could have someone come in and talk about it like me. I'm not advertising
Mm-hmm.
myself, but that's something I definitely do. But
Yeah.
you get everyone started on the same page, and then you have a station where these cards and pens live.
Yeah.
Where they're there, and it's a part of your regular culture. And then I think the next step, you have a journal. People keep a little thing where they write who they're going to write to. There's so many steps you can do this, but you really can't. I don't think you can get it wrong. But I think making a
Mm-hmm.
serious component of your organization, that handwritten mindset, is people are going to start
Mm-hmm.
looking at each other differently. And you could even make, again, a fun requirement that they do it twice a month when you get together for lunch. And then,
Yep.
but I,
Yeah.
in my experience, that will kick off something further.
Yep.
When people begin to see how good it is, it will take
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure you have the supplies ready, because it will take
Yep.
a life of its own.
Exactly. And that's so, like you said, it's really simple. It's not a huge financial investment or even time investment. But I think so many leaders in organizations, we even overlook these simple things. And right, like you said, everyone is busy. Our title leaders are incredibly busy. But, making that purchase and spending 20 to $30 and having these things available, seeing how it goes, encouraging that, having the kickoff where everyone is sitting there watching everyone else engage in this practice. It's such a thoughtful way to let this idea take root.
Right. It will push the gauge on employee engagement. I've seen that in my
Mm-hmm.
experience. And if you would have told
Yep.
the little person writing letter number 30 that was going to be the
Yeah.
case, but you think about it, we spend, I don't know, I think I've read like 90,000 hours of our life in the
Oh,
workplace,
goodness.
you
I
know,
believe it.
and if
Yeah.
we can employ this kind of goodwill, and
Mm-hmm.
it will bring, I mean, everyone, it puts everyone on a different page, because we're all in it together then, and
Yep.
it works across organizations, up and down, outside the
Mm-hmm.
walls. It works everywhere, again, anywhere there's two human
Mm-hmm.
beings trying to connect.
Yep. Yep. And that's a really thoughtful reminder that we can write up to a leader, we can write down to an employee, we can write laterally and outside, thinking about our customers, our clients, our stakeholders, those that we serve. It's a great way to engage everyone.
Right. And it can be, though the first thing I think we think of in a professional context is we think, let's recognize things at work. You can
Mm-hmm.
go outside of that. Like you said, and I'm going to
Yeah.
use this again, it's not private,
Yeah.
it's personal.
Bingo. Yep.
But if you think
Yep.
about the most human things we experience, it's our
Mm-hmm.
kids graduating, or someone having a grandkid, or those
Yeah.
things, and you don't have to get private or even really
Yep.
personal. You just say one sentence.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Congratulations. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
Way to go. Those are human emotions that when you say it to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
they feel like, oh, wait, they care about me this
Yeah.
much. They will absolutely go to the
Yep.
wall for you.
Yep. Yep. I am seen. Excellent. So, Amy, I have two final questions for you, and they go hand in hand. This is how we end all episodes of The Communicative Leader. And the first question is the advice for our leaders. So, our folks who are managers, directors, what is your pragmatic communication leadership tip for them, advice, a challenge? And then the second part is advice for employees of all ranks. What do you want to leave them with?
Right. I think for the leaders, it's going to be an obvious statement.
Mm-hmm.
I would challenge in the next 3 weeks, as you listen to this, to write one
Mm-hmm.
note each of those 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
just keep it totally simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I would challenge you to take a little piece of paper or a notepad or whatever you have, and look around the people who work for you, and make a little list of a reason you could write these people a note,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
see what
Yep.
happens if you gain any traction between those two things. And I would
Yep.
challenge you to do that regardless of how it makes you feel. And again, I would
Yep.
challenge you to be brief. And if you go look my website, my email address is on there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're worried about what you're going to say, I have a lot of experience with this. Email me, and I will email you back and give you my advice about what you said. And I will absolutely have my email on. So I will respond.
Uh,
And to the employees, I think the great thing about my story is that it just happened to me, but then and I'm not blowing smoke up my own rear end. I'm just
mm-hmm.
saying it happened. But what happened was, I had this idea, And I went with it, regardless of the fact that it didn't make any sense, regardless of the fact that, like, what was I really doing? I think if all of us, employees, people from all ranks and file, would just believe in our own little idea, just enough
Yep.
to take one step forward, we would change the whole entire world. And so I'm speaking outside of note writing, like beyond that, and I think as an employee, that puts you in a perfect spot because we all sit there and have ideas in our
Yes.
workplaces. So
Yeah.
what's your idea? And will you take yourself seriously enough to share it, or to act on it, or to start to plan and take your own self seriously?
So powerful, Amy. So I was thinking with the advice to leaders and encouraging them to notice those they work with and notice what they're doing. I think once we start taking note of those positives and writing it down, it changes the lens. Because I think, especially for our title leaders, a lot of times they're looking to say, who didn't do what? What do I
Right.
have to pick up? What deadline was missed? But this flips it to say, wow, Amy is working so hard. Look at that innovative idea.
Right.
Right. And that, going back to that handwritten culture, it's a
Right.
great way to start doing that.
Right. And I keep
And
I keep a notebook by my desk. I mean, I have it right here,
yeah,
and it's got like 5 tabs, and it's like, thank you,
awesome.
support,
Yeah.
sympathy.
Okay.
And I write it down, because then when I go to write
Yeah.
my note in the morning, I don't have to go do any research.
Yes.
And I've seen a
Yep.
lot of leaders, like the woman I talked about, who had all the people who
Yeah.
work for,
Yeah.
they put other people as their eyes and ears. Like
Mm-hmm.
they told people in meetings, like, tell me, you have to give me 2
Oh.
people this week,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Yep.
unmanageable. You can't know about 1,500 people. That's impossible.
Exactly. Yeah. And it makes it, I would imagine too, even more special to recognize that someone else took note of your work. Then they went and reported it all the way up the ladder, and that person wrote you a handwritten note.
Right. And then just a quick story. I was doing a
Yeah.
podcast with a guy who was I don't know what we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, leadership, I think, and we were talking about the whole thing. And he said, "Wait a second," and we stopped the recording, and I think he was in his house, so he went back to his room. He came back out, and he said, "Let me tell you the story." He said, "I was a nurse at the beginning of my career before I did the leadership
Okay.
coaching," and he said, "I was just getting started at this big hospital group, and I went to a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I said an idea." And he said, like, 2
Mm-hmm.
weeks later, I got a handwritten little note from the CEO of this hospital
Mm.
group, and it said, "I can't wait to see what you do here. Great job in the
Yep.
meeting," signed his name. He said, "That was 10 years ago. That note has been in my bedside table since there." He still had it and showed me on the podcast.
Wow.
That's the
Yep.
power you have. That's the power.
Exactly. Yeah. And Amy, too, thank you for shining a light onto the power of employees, everyone out there, and believing in themselves, because we get to see the power of your idea, and how far it has reached. And I know it's just going to keep continuing to do so.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Amy, thank you for sharing your time with us. This has been a delightful conversation. I know that I'm working through figuring out, how I'm going to integrate this into my routine and the groups of people that I can, you know, acknowledge and connect with through handwritten letters or notes. And I really think that so many of our listeners will be doing the same.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor, to be on your program. Thank you.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.